everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 19 of Blue Lock. And I would wear a sports jersey, but it is 13 degrees Fahrenheit outside right now, and my heat in my home is trying its best to keep this a decent temperature, but it is cold. It is very cold out, and so I've got like my cup of coffee to warm me up. I've like got layers on. I am trying to stay warm, and I thought, you know what? Waking up this morning, I think watching Blue Lock will heat me up and be just fine. So, yeah, episode 19. Episodes 16 through 18 were amazing. They were so good. I was so happy that our boys won this last game. Barrow becoming the villain and coming out of his shell and being that. Well, he was already out of his shell, but just getting more in tune with his villainous side. Love it. I love Asagi just taking charge, and he's like, I'm going to get what I want. Treat yourself, Asagi. Treat yourself indeed. And then Nagi's he's just happy to be here. But yeah, I've got some comments before we start because I'm super excited. I want to see who the hell they're going to pick. I don't know. I'm really excited. I was like, I think it's going to be Chigiri, but going back through the comments for this week and everybody talking about how Rayo is balanced, I'm like, could they pick Rayo? They could. The only thing that keeps me from thinking that they would is that Rayo was so caught up in his like one-sided, I told everybody it's like a telenovela. Like Rayo believes he's like Valentina from Drag Race. He believes he's in his own fantasy of a telenovela, and Nagi has betrayed him, and he's like going through all, and Asagi is this jilted seductress. It's like, no, this is all in your head, Rayo. But Rayo was so in his head last game that I don't think he got to show off all that he could do. He kind of has the same problem Asagi has sometimes, where he overthinks things, except Asagi's overthinking the game and Rayo is overthinking everything outside of it. So I think that Rayo didn't show off to me enough to prove that he would be worth Asagi and Nagi and Barrow picking. I don't think Asagi and Barrow would pick Rayo, definitely. Nagi, of course, wants to pick him, but Nagi may be like, well, since you said we're broke up, I guess we're broke up, and may say otherwise. I don't think they'll pick Kunigami, because I think last episode kind of showed that Kunigami has some growing to do, and he's going to need to do that alongside Rayo. And Kunigami have some growing to do, and they need to do that in their 2v2s to build back up. I'm hopeful that the two of them will eventually get to the end of the second selection, but they're going to have to do some growing in order to do that. And I'm here for it. I'm ready for it, but they're going to have to do that to make it there. I think Chigiri is the best suited to go to the next stage with Barrow and Asagi, and then because he's just evolved, his pink aura has sprouted through, as they noted in the comments. It's like it was blue, but now it's like this pink aura, and I was like, yes, of course it's pink. He's princess, of course. So that makes sense. I think Chigiri is the safe and logical choice, but Blue Lock has proven me wrong, so we shall see, right? But in going with the comments, Seppi talked about how when chemicals react, sometimes there is a smoke, and that kind of aligns with the aura that is coming off everyone. When the chemical reactions start to take place, the auras start to come out, and I'm like, oh, that's such a cool little tidbit and detail. I like that, Seppi. Thank you for pointing that out. And then Geen pointed out in episode 16 that Ego's words, I thought interpreting it in the future reactions past episode 16 was that he was dedicating his life to soccer, and that kind of connected him to Reen. But Geen says no, the translation is that Ego is betting everything on Blue Lock. He's gambling and betting everything on the Blue Lock system, not dedicating. And dedicating and betting are in fact two different words with two very different meanings. So I'm like, okay, it also makes sense. I mean, the dedication for Ego makes sense because Ego is like all in on soccer. That's his life. And Henri has to pick up all the pieces around him. But Ego being a betting man kind of adds a nice little layer to his character, that he's willing to gamble. I'm very curious now, because we have this weird like pseudo rivalry between him, the one like manager that's like got the tacky clothes and the white hair that's just like, we'll see you fail, Ego, and Ego's like, I'm Slender Man, don't care. I'm curious to see eventually, I don't think it's gonna happen this season, but I know the manga is ongoing. Later on, way down the line, I'll be curious to see if we get Ego's backstory and what we get with that. That's going to be rather interesting. So I'm excited. I can't wait for that to happen. So, but I like that little detail there. And then Wim talked about a lot of little logistical things that I thought were important to bring up. One, the fact that Blue Lock, this takes place. They first showed up at Blue Lock in November 20th of 2018. So the pandemic ain't happened yet. What a time. What a time to be alive. 2018 was such a great year, right? All manner of sins were avoided that year. What a good year. But yeah, they moved into Blue Lock in November 20th. The World Cup had happened in July of 2018 that year. And a little fun tidbit that Wim pointed out was that the manga officially started August 1st of 2018. So not only was the manga starting with the plot of it happening in the future, quote unquote, but now we know that August 1st is also Yaoi Day. I feel like the mangaka made these choices intentionally. I feel like the mangaka for Ace of the Diamond, there's a certain point in Ace of the Diamond where the mangaka makes some decisions. And if you're a shipper or a yaoi reader, you're like, oh, let's just make this a BL at this point, because at this point it is. And I feel like that is the case. And the fact that this mangaka started this manga on Yaoi Day, mangaka like that do things like this intentionally. Don't tell me they don't, because you could have chose any day, but you chose August 1st. Okay. Sure, you were waiting for the World Cup to be over. Sure. But, and the timing was good, but you could have made August 2nd, could have made August 10th. All right. We'll just go with that. And so they've been in Blue Lock for about a month, but Wim also noted that winter break in Japan for school is usually December 26th to January 6th. They don't get a lot of a break. And Ego probably doesn't care because he's obsessed with soccer, education, not important. So they have missed some school to be here at Blue Lock at this point, right? And not only that, they've missed time on winter break with their families, but I know Japan doesn't celebrate Christmas the same way that other countries do, so there's that. But still, New Year's. Are they going to celebrate New Year's together? That'd be nice. Who knows? And the Blue Lock players' ages range from 15 to 18, with 17 as the average. But Wim said that once season 1 was over, they could share like the age sheets. We'll see on that. So yeah, so maybe age has something to do with a future plot point. We'll see. But yeah, I thought that was rather interesting, right? So speaking of Ace of the Diamond, you all know we're 19 episodes in, but we cannot have a Blue Lock episode without also plugging my favorite sports anime. So take a look.
In lots of sports anime, the concept of the rival is integral to the story. Someone that you can play against, someone you can play with, and someone that makes you better. And not only in Blue Lock is this the case, but also in this series, Ace of the Diamond. Yes, in Ace of the Diamond, Sawamura and Furuya are two of the best rivals in sports anime who not only have to compete for the exact same position on their team, but also make each other better along the way. So when you're done watching Blue Lock and seeing these rivals all face each other, go and check out the rivalry between Sawamura and Furuya in Ace of the Diamond. Now, back to the reaction.
I think Trikawa should become a permanent member of the Blue Lock advertisement. I know that Oikawa is high Q, but I like infusing Oikawa into the Ace of the Diamond world. I don't know where in the world he would fit in that world. He'd probably be a pitcher because he's a diva. But would Oikawa be good in the Blue Lock world? I think he would. I think Oikawa would be fine in Blue Lock because Oikawa can be a bit egoistical and think of himself and think of what's best. Oikawa would be an interesting player in this world because he does think of himself and he's all about his own self perseverance and his own self-motivation and self-growth, but he also wants to kind of manipulate others in the field. I think Oikawa and Asagi would get along really well, actually. I think he would. Atsumu and IQ would be interesting too in that regard. We could go on a whole tangent. We could go on a whole tangent. It would be a fun video to do a video of would these sports anime characters fit into the Blue Lock world or not. Granted, my only sports anime for comparison would be Ace of the Diamond, Kuroko's Basketball, and Haikyuu, but those are kind of the more popular sports-ish ones if you don't count like Hajime no Ippo or some of the other series. So they're the more mainstream ones, so maybe that would be a fun video to do. We'll think about that. Coming this summer will be a video about Blue Lock characters from other sports anime, and would they survive Blue Lock? That'll be interesting. We'll have to see about that. But yeah, in any case, I'm super excited to start this episode. I hope you all are too, but I've wasted enough time. We're not going to waste any more. We are going to dive right into Blue Lock episode 19. Oh, I'm so excited. And we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1. And let's see who we pick. I just love episodes like this so much. I love the mid episodes between in sports anime, right? Because, you know, you have a big, like, all hype episode where it's just like, just stress and tension and anxiety because you don't know how the match is going to go. And then once the match is over, you need that episode to just kind of decompress. And now we only have episodes 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. We have 4 or 5 episodes left. I think we have 5 episodes left. It's like, okay, we have 5 episodes left. So I'm assuming the next match is going to literally, by the time we prep for the next match, but I'm assuming, if we're going by the logic of how this series has gone so far, next episode's episode 20. I'm assuming that we will spend part of the episode maybe preparing, like, Reen has to say yes. Reen and Bachira and Toki and Aryu have to say yes to Asagi challenge them. I didn't think we'd get Asagi challenging them yet. I thought that would be next episode when they'd go up to them. I was like, oh, okay, huh. So I felt like we would have Asagi challenging them the next episode, but no, he's sitting there waiting like a damn, like Don Draper against the wall, being like, hey, Bachira, I'm back, bitch. And it's like, ah! And Bachira's like, hey, oh my God. So, yeah, I'm very curious, right? I'm very curious to know what we're going to do. I have thoughts about this whole thing, right? So I have thoughts about this whole thing. And what I know about it is that we're going to probably have next episode them figuring out a strategy. Because Chigiri is new to the group. They did pick Chigiri. We'll talk about all of that in this episode. But they did pick Chigiri. So they've got to next episode kind of like what they did with Baro. Be like, okay, what options do we have? What can we do? How can we do all this? Blah, 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 blah. And go from there. So, and see what happens then. But my thing is, I feel like episode 20, they're going to do like kind of a practice round, and that episode is going to lead up to the game starting. And episodes 21, 22, and 23 are probably going to be the match between Reen and them. Reen's team and Isagi's team is going to be the rematch for 3 episodes. And it'll probably conclude in the 4th episode, which is the season finale. And then they'll get their 5th player, whichever team will get their 5th player and move on to clear stage 2. Right? And so that opens up a lot of things. That opens up, if that is ended up being the case, and I'm counting my chickens before they hatch, obviously. But if that ends up being the case, then it may leave us by the end of season 2 wondering, okay, well, which teams are still left fighting to clear stage 2? Which teams are going to end up doing that? We do have an idea of some other team members that have made it to the next stage. We'll write that out here on Whiteboard Kun in a second. But that could end up having season 2. Season 2 could have a lot of matches within showing the other players getting back up to the second selection if they do. Right? That could end up being a thing. And we'll just have to see. But I don't know. Blue Lock may have some more twists and turns by the end of this season that we'll just have to wait for and see what happens. So, I don't know. But here's my prediction. This is what I think is going to happen, though. Which is going to be like, it's going to be like a knife wedged in the system. And I think this episode was the foreshadowing for it. As much as I love the Bachira and Asagi ship, and Asagi wanted to catch up to Bachira and be like, I came back. I'm here for you. I don't think Asagi's going to pick Bachira at the end. He's going to pick Reen. He's going to pick Reen because Reen's the better player. And Reen is the better striker, and that's what their team needs. And they kind of established this in this episode, being like, it's, for Asagi, he's like, for our team to function, we're kind of weird. We're a weird group. We're a weirdo group. And for our team to function, we have to have really strong players on it, and we have to be able to devour each other. So in relation to Ace of the Diamond, Isagi's team is kind of shaping up to be like what Reen's team is, which is kind of like Inashiro, where it's a collection of really talented people that can all play on their own, and their reactions are just based upon them bouncing off like sparks off of each other. And I think in the end, it's going to be who can shine more. Um, is it going to be Reen or Bachara? And I think in the end, Isagi's going to be like, look, love you, man. Glad I caught back up. You know I'm the monster that you want, but now I'm going to make you chase after me. And I'm going to take Reen and go. So you come find me. And their whole dynamic and their whole ship is just going to be like a bumblebee chasing after a flower. Isagi has the little sprout coming off of his head, and Bachara's a bee. It's just going to be a bee chasing a flower. That's going to be this whole series, because in typical long-running BL fashion, you can't just have your couple get together midpoint through the story. No, that's not how this works. You've got to have your couple be endgame, but this ain't endgame. So, yeah, I think that going by the logic in which they picked Chigiri, if he was going to pick Bachara, if they beat Rin's team, if Isagi was going to pick Bachara, they would have chosen Reo in this round. But the logic that Isagi throws down, saying why they picked Chigiri over Reo, is exactly why I think they're going to pick Rin over Bachara when it comes down to it in this final game. And then Bachara's going to be like, okay, touche, bitch. I guess we're going to play this game now. This is going to be our foreplay, is just to go back and forth like this. Now, I will admit, right, because Discord's been trying to gaslight me into the Rin and Isagi ship. I see what you're doing. I will admit that there is a little side of Rin that comes out in this episode that I'm like, okay. Because here's the thing. If Isagi can melt Baro's heart, which he has, Isagi can melt Rin's heart as well. This is a harem anime, and Isagi's at the center of it, right? Bachara's just the fan club president. But we need to ride on right board, Kun. We need to go through this episode. There's so much to talk about. I'm like, oh my god. We just need to go through the episode chronologically, or I'm going to lose myself in a train of thought. So I've already wasted 6 minutes. Let's just go through this episode and start us off. Man, so here's the tea. Here's the tea. Chigiri didn't think he was getting picked. I thought last episode Chigiri was expecting to get picked because he was like looking over. He didn't look as distressed as Kunigami or Reo. So I was thinking, oh, Chigiri knows he's going to get picked. No, he didn't want to get picked. I think that he was banking on them taking Reo. And then him and Kunigami would be a team and would go against all odds to make it to the next round. Because here's the thing. Chigiri and Kunigami had all decided that they were mad that Isagi left with not Reo, but with Nagi and Bachara. And Bachara's already moved on, so they can't really be mad at Bachara anymore. So, but they were like, they wanted revenge on Isagi for being like, hey, he left us, didn't take either of us. He went with Nagi and Bachara and left. So they're like, well, we're just going to beat him. So they kind of had this, like, we're going to go against the odds and beat Isagi and then take Nagi and show him what it feels like and move on, right? And that's not what happened. Instead, now we have our team. We have up here Rin, we have Aryu, we have Toki, and we have Bachara, right? We basically have Team Batter, for better words. They're just Team Batter, right? Batter up, right? Batter up! Let's go! So we have those. Toki and Aryu are not going to care. They're going to instantly say, let's face Isagi, because they're like, we've been desperately trying to solicit other teams to face us so we can move on the last week. So we're going to be more than happy to face Isagi's team at this point. And Bachara and Rin, of course, want to face Isagi's team. So yeah, we've got that team. And now we have Isagi, we have Baro, we have Nagi, and we have Chigiri. If they get Rin, that's going to be a team. That is going to be a team, let me tell you. Now, that would, Aryu, Toki, and Bachara, Team Bat over here. Team Bat is still pretty formidable. So, I'm not, Team Bat is still pretty formidable. I think they'll have no trouble getting a fourth person and a fifth person. I think they'll be fine. But I think that this team is going to, I think they're going to take Reen, because Reen is the strongest of all of them, and Asagi wants the strongest. Asagi has dug his own grave and is compiling a chaotic group of alpha wolves. And he's like, this is what I wanted. I don't know why I'm surprised that they're all a bunch of chaotic alpha wolves. Why am I not surprised? You know? So we have that. Also, that is also me acknowledging that Chigiri is an alpha in the relationship with Kunigami, and I'm fine with that. So, but yeah, that's kind of the situation. So we might as well talk about our other groups that we have. Poor Kunigami and Reo have been left behind. We'll talk about them for a second. They're going to have to face up against... The thing is, they can't face up against the teams of 3 we just saw, because the teams of 3 have to lose a player first. Isn't that fun? So meanwhile, we also have Raichi and Wakima, and our final person here. My dogs are going crazy. Of course, they're playing right now. Is Gin. And then we just found out Lemon, yes, and Imamura, Becky with the good hair, and Cone. They made it through. So okay, wait. From Team Z, we know that Naruhaya's out. He was too good for this world. He had to go. But we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 10 was Naruhaya and Igarashi. Did Igarashi make it through? That was the one I was worried about. I was like, if anybody's not going to make it through that first stage of the second selection, it's Igarashi. So Igarashi, we don't know, right? Igarashi, we don't know. We also don't know about Nico. We haven't seen Nico. Where's he at? It would be interesting if Igarashi and Nico were on a team, but who'd they be with? We don't know. So, interesting. Maybe they could be with Zantetsu. That would be fascinating. Zantetsu, Nico, and Igarashi. That'd be a weird group. That'd be a weird, like, team leftovers. We'll see, maybe. But, yeah, we're going to have to figure out. I feel like Kunigami is going to make it to the second selection. I feel like Kunigami will. Reo is the big question mark, and we're going to talk about Reo in this, but I like that Baro is still on getting Kunigami as part of his group, because he's like, he can hold up the ball in and around the box. If he joins his team, we'll spend more time with it up front, and that way I can score more goals. I like that Baro's reasoning is he just wants to use Kunigami. He's like, Kunigami is a tool I can use. Let's pick him. But Baro was surprisingly compromising in this episode. Since Baro has been reborn and is now a villain, he's better to get along with. Even though he gets mad at Reo and Chigiri, which I don't quite blame him. We'll talk about that. But he's definitely more compromising, which I was surprised by, because Nagi's like, no, Reo in an anchor role can do better and balance our attack and defense. If we want to play however we want, he's our best bet. Which, that was kind of the formation that Kunigami and Chigiri had with Reo. Reo was the anchor. He was the balanced stat guy that they could kind of bounce off of and play however they wanted to. And Asagi's like, yeah, that's the safe choice. But that ain't the choice that we want. Right? Yeah, he's like, no. He's like, that's why they lost. Was because, here's the thing. Asagi is trying to create a team that is going to beat Reen and the others. And he was comfortable, because here's the thing. We've talked about this in previous episodes. Bachara and Reo are similar. They are very similar. They're both kind of anchor characters that want to play with others and want to please others. That after this episode, I'm like, oh no, Bachara is similar to Reo, not in terms of anything in his background other than him and Reo. If we're talking about both of them, they both want to play soccer with someone. They both want to play soccer with someone, and they are very eager to please that someone. And I don't want that taken the wrong with Batra, because Batra does do his own thing. He is much more independent than Rayo is, Batra is. But at the end of the day, Ring kind of like daggers the heart, and he's like, you just want to play soccer with someone. You want to find a monster that is real to match the imaginary monster you've been playing with your whole life. I'm like, is Ring a psychology major? Is he going into therapy? Is he going to be a therapist? I mean, he probably should. That'd be kind of helpful. He needs to sit on the couch and look in a mirror and talk to himself for a good portion of time. But he kind of hits the nail on the head, right? And so Batra does want to, and in his dream he has with Noel and the other strikers, he wants them to pass, he wants to be able to pass the ball to someone for them to pass it back. And in the dream though, Noel and the others don't pass it back. They keep on going, right? So even though Batra and Rayo are very different in terms of that pleasing aspect, at the end of the day, they are playing soccer to interact with someone. The difference is that Rayo, a lot of Rayo's backstory of him wanting to defy his parents and do his own thing ties into that more than Batra, because Batra's mom and Rayo's parents are polar opposites, and we'll talk about that with the backstory when we get to it. But they both want to play soccer with someone at the end of the day. For Rayo, it's Nagi. For Batra, it's Isagi. And Rin kind of goes, that's not the right reason to be doing this. And it's like, he's not wrong. Rin is not wrong. And I think that's why Isagi's going to pick Rin at the end. And he's going to be like, Batra, I love you. We're a ship. We're as strong as the Titanic. But if I pick you just because I'm comfortable with you, neither of us are going to grow to our full potential. If I pick you just because I know that he's like, I had to grow because I lost you. And I've become so good. If I bring you back now, is it going to stagnate me and I'm not going to keep growing? Or do I take this asshole up here who needs to have his heart defrosted on high in a microwave? And do I take him and do I devour him instead? You know, he's like, I like honey, but I can't have too much of it or I'm going to get a stomach ache. Occasionally I need some eel. So to some saltiness to balance it out. So I think that's what's going to happen. Right? But because the way they describe it here, Baro instantly concedes. He's like, oh yeah, let's just take Rayo. Let's go with him. That'll work. Sure. And Nagi, it's like the one time that Nagi and Baro agree is about Rayo. And then Isagi's like, yeah, that'd bring the team together nicely. But it's suicidal if it's going to crush our potential. And I'm like, that's where Blue Lock is so different than every sports anime that I think exists right now, because every other sports anime would be like teamwork, camaraderie. Yes, let's bring together the characters that balance each other out and adhese each other together. And Isagi's like, that's so basic though. Isagi's like, it would be suicide and crush our potential. We have so much potential that we're not going to be able to access unless we crash against a wall with something. He's like, I know this SUV over here has a 5-star safety rating, but that Ferrari can go really damn fast and is going to get us places that we've never been before. So let's try the Ferrari first. Even though it may crash and burn and destroy us all, it's a gamble we have to take. That's where Isagi, I talk about Gein's comment about ego being the gambler. That's where Isagi's a lot like ego, taking the risk, taking the game. It's like risk and reward. You know, you can play it safe in the stock market and you can kind of ride this little middle ground, or you can risk high. You can bet high and you might get rewarded high, or you're going to crash and burn. The thing about it is with the stock market, usually if you bet when you're young, you've got a lot of time to accrue things, and the stock market will change and there's ebb and flow, and over time it'll kind of balance out. But that's something totally different. He's like, that would crush our potential. And I like that they're like, really? He's like, yeah, the correct choice is to create a balanced team, but that's not our way. He's like, we are not a balanced team. I like this song. He's like, let's address our flaws. He's like, let's address our flaws. He's like, we are not a team that cohesively plays funsies and gets along with each other. He's like, Baro is too much of a ball hog. Baro wants the ball for himself. Isagi wants to devour people. Nagi's like the most balanced person of the team right now, but he's still kind of aloof and out there, right? He's like, we're a group of weirdos. Balanced team ain't gonna work for us. He's like, no, the chemical reactions are the key to clearing the second stage. And Asagi is a little selfish in this part here because Asagi's like, we need these chemical reactions. It's kind of Asagi talking for himself. He's like, I can't create a chemical reaction with Reo. He's like, I don't want to create a chemical reaction with Reo. That should be boring. Green plus purple, that equals shit. Like, that ain't gonna work. That's not gonna work, right? No. Green plus pink, though. Watermelon, am I right? So, he's like, no, not gonna work. He's like, if we're here now because we could create some in real time, we need a team that will be able to keep doing that. We need a team that creates the spontaneous sparks that create a fire. And Reo is not that. Reo is water. It's not going to do that. He's like, I devoured Barrow and devoured me right back. That was the goal. None of us could have foreseen a play like that. He's like, so in order for us to move forward, we need unpredictability. That is the thing that sets his team apart, right? Because it's that unpredictability that a team isn't going to be able to react to, right? And it kind of feeds on that idea, literally, it feeds on that idea that you need strong people around you to get stronger, and strong people that are competitive and rival you will make you stronger, right? And again, I coach a speech team. It's kind of the same way. I tell my students that are on the team, I'm like, the best feeling is when you are competing against someone on your own team and you try to beat each other. Like, it's kind of the best feeling because it's like, that it's helping your team because you're both doing really good. But when you try to compete against each other and beat each other, it just gives you that kind of like taste of like, yeah, I'm that good. It's that egoism, right? Not egotist, but egoist. And that's kind of the same feeling here. It's like, we don't want to settle for a mediocre player who's just balanced. We need crazy strong that's going to make us want to get stronger to match them. Basically, what Asagi's saying is no one wants to match Reo, which is so sad because I like Reo so much. And he's like, that's the essence. I want someone who can devour us. The cannibalism, the vor of this series, why not? But Asagi is such a fun character because he goes from being like on the field this demon monster to off the court being like, hi friends, won't you be my neighbor? Like, he goes from being Arnold Schwarzenegger to Mr. Rogers in like 2 seconds, right? Which is hilarious because Reen is so opposite of that. Reen is the same on and off the court. He's just like, he's the same. He's lukewarm. Oddly enough, he's just lukewarm the whole time. He's just tepid, right? He says he hates people like that, but he kind of is himself. So it's funny. And he's like, otherwise we won't be able to beat them. I like that he doesn't have Batra in the trio of people he needs to beat, but he's just like, we have to beat Reen and them. And I like that Barrow's like, fine, you make a good argument. I'll take it. Seems legit. I'll go with it. In that case, he's the one who fits the bill. And Nagi's like, okay, he's the only striker who kept up with us in the game, which is true. He was. If you were paying attention to the game, Chigiri was the only one. And so then they're like, okay, we've made our selection. We have picked Chigiri to join the crew. The only one who can join without disappearing. And that's the thing, too. It's like you need a team where everyone can stand out together and be present. If Kunigami joins as he is now, he's not going to stand out. He's just going to be a tool used by Barrow. Well, that's nice, but what if Reen and them get past Barrow? Then he's no good. And then it's like, we can't pick Reo. He's not going to stand out. He's going to drown. He's only going to be thinking of Nagi and not wanting to help out anybody else. And Nagi, Reo kind of shot himself in the foot being like, well, I don't like Asagi. I'm not going to help him. I'm like, that's not going to work either. If he was on the team, he would ignore Barrow and Asagi and only focus on Nagi. That's not going to work either. So the only one that's left that can stand on their own is Chigiri Hyoma. And Chigiri's like, no, my ship with Kunigami. How can we continue? And Reo's like, well, shit. And Kunigami's the same way too. And I like that Asagi, he just gets so serious. He's like, join us. We need your legs. Like, he just gets real serious in that moment. Like, on the court, he's a freaking Napoleon, right? Off the course, he's like, I don't know. Oh, what am I thinking of? Naomi Kidman or something. Something opposite. And Chigiri's like, and just, I'm sorry, but this whole episode cemented the Chigiri and Kunigami ship. It's over. It's done. The ship is sailed. Chigiri is just like, I wanted to stay behind with you to get revenge on Asagi. But he's like, I gotta go. And he's like, listen, Kunigami. Not talking to Ryo at this point. He's like, don't forget, we haven't beaten Asagi yet. He's like, our goal is to get better than him, right? He's like, I'm gonna hold on to the frustration that we share. I'll be waiting for you, hero. Oh my god. I'm like, I think that Kunigami will make it to past the second selection and join back up with Chigiri. I think it's going to happen. I think that, we're getting all these comparisons. Chigiri's kind of like Bachara in this, but he's opposite of Bachara too, because Chigiri's like, I'm waiting for you, and Bachara's like, I ain't waiting for you. So, but the funny thing is, both of them, I think both Chigiri and Bachara believe that their significant other is going to catch up with them. But Chigiri, like, it's like they both kind of understand how the other functions in relation to themselves. So Bachara is not somebody that waits around for people. Bachara is like, if you want me, come and claim me. And that's how he was from his childhood on. He was like, I'm not going to sit around and wait for people. I'm going to keep going. You guys need to just get on my level. And that's what he wants. That's what he wants Asagi to do, is to get on his level. And he's confident that he will do so. But he's like, I'm not going to sit around and wait for you. I'm gonna go with whatever the strongest player is, because that's what the monster inside of me is telling me. So I hope that you're the monster I'm looking for. But Bachara is like singing an Aaliyah song in his head. He's like, are you that somebody? Tell me be that somebody. Dun, dun. Like, if you know what a song I'm talking about, look up Aaliyah, and there's a song called Somebody. That's the song Bachara is singing to Asagi right now. Meanwhile, Chigiri knows that Kunigami needs encouragement to come get him. So he's like, I'm going to wait for you. I'll be waiting for you. I'm moving forward, but I'm going to be anticipating you catching up to me. So don't let me down. Here's your one chance, Fancy. Don't let me down. And that's what he's doing. And the sun's shining on him. It's beautiful. And of course, Kunigami, like, watching him walk away with that beautiful braided hair and ponytail. So then we have the breakup. Okay. I love Ryo and Nagi so much. I freaking love them, but I'll be honest, this moment was needed, because Ryo has been a stage 5 yandere clinger the last several episodes, maybe even before then, and he's just distraught. And, Nagi was real nice back at that bath. Nagi was real nice and trying to be, hey, friend, and Ryo, like, smacked his hand away and was like, no. And it is Nagi's fault for not communicating. But now they talk, and he's like, hey, he's like, and Nagi tries to say, the last play only worked because it was against you. He's like, because you're so good that we knew you would have the skill to pass it to somebody else in that impossible situation. So he's like, don't feel bad that, it didn't work out. He's like, it was close and it could have. And he's like, and he says, you're amazing, right? He's like, I already knew, but you're amazing. And he's like, I'm going on ahead, but I know we'll... And here's the thing. What frustrates me is that Nagi was going to probably say, I'm going on ahead, but I know that we'll meet up together. Kind of like what Chigiri told Kunigami. But Ryo's pride and Ryo's anger stopped Nagi from communicating finally. He's like, I know. He's like, well, then why didn't you pick me? And Nagi's like, well, it was group decision. And he's like, and I get Ryo being like, I don't want you to pity me. You didn't pick me, so don't come over here and give me a pity party. I mean, Nagi could have probably cut out all of that. You're amazing. We almost didn't win because of you, blah, blah, blah. He could have just said, we're going on ahead, but I know you'll catch up. He could have just said that, but Ryo stopped him. He's like, give it to me straight. Do you not care? And this part here, I was a little bit like, I know Ryo's in his own head. I know what it's like to be Ryo in this situation. And so I'm like, I feel for Ryo, but he's like, when he does that passive aggressive, like, you just don't care about me, do you? I'm like, that's a little passive aggressive. And I'm glad that Tauruses don't do passive aggressive. We shut that shit down. We're like, no, that's the one thing. We're like, no. We're going to give it to you straight. We're going to tell you how it is. And that's just the way it goes. And you take it or you leave it. But this whole passive aggressive stuff, now we don't deal. And so when he's like, oh, you don't care about me anymore, do you? You've changed. And I'm like, I don't think Nagi's changed fundamentally. I think Nagi's evolved and grown. And he's, been more vocal about himself. But the thing about it is, I don't think Nagi's fundamentally changed. I think he's being more vocal and gaining a voice of his own. And I think that Rayo, because he's not done that around Rayo, believes that he's changed because of it. But that's not entirely the case. And he's like, you've forgotten our promise that we become the best in the world together. And Nagi's like, oh, well, hold on now. Being the best in the world together means that we're both the best together. And in order for us to be the best, we have to do these certain things. And it's going to break us apart for a while. But I feel like at that point, Nagi's like, now, wait a minute. I think what I'm doing is going to help me become the best so that I can match up with what you could become. Are you saying something different? Because I think you're saying something different. And he's like, if you're going to abandon me, then do it properly. And I'm like, Rayo, he just said, like, what's so frustrating is Rayo didn't let him finish his sentence. I think what he was going to say is, I know we'll catch up together because we're in this together. Whereas Rayo thinks because Nagi didn't select him, it means he's abandoning him. And that's not the case, right? And then Nagi's like, so if I choose you now, are you satisfied? I love the monster behind Nagi, like this skull that's like all messed up. He's like, so if I pick you, that's it? You're good as long as we're on the field together? That's enough for you? Is that going to make you the best? He's like, then what? We'll be a team, but how is that going to make us better? He's like, is becoming the best in the world that easy? I love that Nagi stands up for himself and he's like, look, Isagi's making some tough decisions too, right? And I think Isagi's going to make a tough decision because he's going to pick Rin over Batra and it's going to suck, right? But he's like, to become the best in the world, these are the choices we have to make. And that was our promise. He's like, you're the one who's forgotten. He's like, you told me all these things, but in the end, he's like, he's like, to be honest, he's like, I'm done caring. He's like, you're being a hassle, Rayo. You're being a stage 5 clinger, and that's not cool. And man, Rayo's face, it's like you just daggered it heart through, just bleeding out everywhere. He's like, I'm done with you. It's like, nope, bye. And he's like, Rayo, become the one who chooses, not the one waiting to be chosen. Yes, that line, that's the heart of it. He's like, you just want me to string you along until we're the best together, but then we won't be the best together. I'll be the best and you'll be riding my coattails. He's like, that's not what our promise was. You need to step up, become the best alongside me, and then we can be a pair together. But right now you're just clinging and hoping that I'll pick you rather than getting to the point where you're the one who picks. Which now he's like, what are you playing soccer for? He's like, what was the point? Yeah. He's like, are you playing for me? Are you playing for yourself? Oof. And then, man, Isagi is like, those with the potential to be the best striker in the world, only those can survive in Blue Lock. Ooh. And then Rayo. So the big question is with Rayo, what is he going to do? And I love Kunigami's like, don't you look down. You watch them go. You watch what they took from us. If we drop our heads now, we're done for. I love Kunigami's like, if you give up now, we're done. He's like, you watch them go. You let that be your motivation. You make that sit in your heart and like burn itself in there and tattoo it to your soul. I was like, yes, Kunigami, because he's like, you don't ever forget this day. Yes. Uh-huh. Kunigami Rinsuke and Mikage Rigo. Oh, yep. I also like that Rayo's being called by his first name throughout all of this. I've just realized that Rayo, it's his first name everybody called him about. Interesting. But yeah, that's the thing. The question is, what is Rayo going to do now? Kunigami's going to fight tooth and nail and to get back to Chigiri. And I think that's why Kunigami's going to succeed, is he's going to fight tooth and nail. The big question with Rayo is he going to fight? Is he going to figure out what Nagi was telling him? Is it going to sink in and click? And is he gonna fight alongside Kunigami, or is he gonna sink? I think it could honestly go either way. I think either Rayo will pick up the pieces and will like get mad and fight his way back and be like, you don't get to break up with me. I'm the only one who gets to break up with you. And then like go there. Or he's going to lose and get kicked out of Blue Lock. It's going to be one or the other. Right? I wouldn't be mad if he got kicked out of Blue Lock and then secretly just started funding everything Nagi did in a pitch to try to win him back. But yeah, I mean, I still ship Nagi and Rayo hardcore, even though they're in their breakup era. I'm still shipping them hardcore because I want Rayo to get better. I want Rayo to pick up what Nagi was throwing down and get better, but I don't know if he is or not. So that's going to be the question. That's going to be the trick. That's going to be the way that we have to go about it. So I don't know. The big question too is going to be, we have all these teams here. We have 5 episodes left. Are we going to spend the next episode just focusing on Chigiri and the others practicing to get ready? Are we going to see some of the other teams battling and see what those are like? Are we going to get any more 3-on-3s or 2-on-2s this season before we get to the season finale? If Igarashi doesn't make it past the first stage, I wouldn't be surprised if Nico and Zantetsu were a duo and we saw them again. Maybe? I don't know. It'd be curious. Be curious to see if we do. I keep thinking we'll see Nico again. Because he made that statement. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Zantetsu. Wouldn't be surprised. But Nico made that statement that he was coming after Asagi and Bachira. I'm like, was that just a random thing that just he said randomly and then we never see him again? I don't think so. I think we will see him again. It's just a matter of when. So, I don't know. We'll see. But yeah. So they move on. And then we have the OP. Then we get Bachira Dancing Boy. Bachira's backstory. Oh my god. I love it. I love all of it. I love his mom. It seems like there's not a dad in the picture. The father's not in the picture. It's just the mom who's the artist and her son, which Bachira being the son of an artist makes so much sense because he has this like just free spirit about him and just carefree spirit, and her being like just her nurturing that, being like, yeah, you've got an imaginary friend, this monster that only you can see. She's like, I know exactly what that's like. You're not weird. That's just who you are. I love how she raises him. She's like, no, listen to the monster. And I like the way that she phrases it. She talks about the monster being something that we lose when we become an adult. She's like, oftentimes we lose, and the monster could be tied to that drive towards one's dreams. We could say that it's the drive and the resolve. And she's like, when we get it to an adult, we kind of settle, right? And that goes back to Ego's whole conversation about dream doping and everything. She's like, when we get to be an adult, we settle and we don't listen to the voice of the monster anymore. And we just kind of settle with what we've got, and we quit. You know, maybe we chase dreams, maybe we settle for something different, but we don't pursue them anymore. And she's like, I don't want you to be like that. I want you to keep pursuing that dream no matter what. But, you know, the question is pursuing that dream the same as chasing it, which is what Ego said was dream doping. So there is a question of, is the mom dream doping? Because she has this studio, she has all these paintings. By Ego standards, is she chasing a dream to become this artist that's famous, and she's just settling for selling all these paintings? Or to me, it seemed like she had settled to just being this artist selling these paintings that were just random and not being, you know, as good as she wanted. And she didn't want Bachira to fall into that. But, you know, where does Bachira fall into all of this? That's kind of the big question at this point. Is he just, Rin kind of points out, he's like, why are you playing soccer? Is it because you want to be the best? Or is it because you're trying to find someone to match you? Because, you know, by our standards with strikers and what we know from Blue Lock, the idea is that the best strikers in the world aren't trying to find someone to play soccer with. They're not trying to find someone to match them. They know they're the best. They want to play against someone that is as good as them, but they're not trying to play with. It's like playing against versus playing with. And what is Bachira's end goal going to be? And I'm not necessarily saying that Bachira is weak in that respect. It's difficult. It's complicated to say, right? I'm going to try to find my words to talk about it. He's like, I want a real friend who can play soccer with me, right? He's like, I want someone to kick the ball back and forth to. And Rena's saying that's not what this is about. Rena's like, you just want somebody to play with. Rena's like, I don't want somebody to play with. I want to be the best. And that's where we're different, right? That's kind of what he's getting at, which we'll talk about Reen here in a second. And she's like, I hope you'll make a friend like that one day. And he's like, I know I will. I love that we get the monster so much in this. Then we come back to Reen and his beautiful under eyelashes. Reen's just too pretty for the screen. It's not fair. It's not fair that someone with such a frigid heart that looks like such a catty bitch is like so hot. It's not fair, damn it. But that's how it works, right? And then, of course, Batra is excited that he's playing against somebody like Reen. He's like, I'm playing with somebody that can match me, right? For the record, I don't ship Batra and Reen at all. No, I don't ship them together. I think at the end when Batra is like, who am I going to end up playing with more? Who's the monster that's going to satisfy me? Asagi or Reen? I think Asagi anticipates it being, I think Batra anticipates it being Asagi, but if it's not, he's going to be like, And that's kind of why I think if Asagi picks Reen over Batra in the end, I think that Batra will not have the reaction that Rayo had. When Rayo was not picked, and whenever Asagi chose to go with Nagi, and whenever they picked Chigiri, Rayo's immediate reaction was to shut down because he thought that he just wasn't good enough and he was pissed off about it. I don't think Batra, I think because Batra wants to play with the strongest monster on the field, and he's like, well, it's either going to be Asagi or Reen. Who's it going to be? You know, I think that if Asagi picks Reen, Batra is going to be like, fair game, touche. I don't blame you. And I think he's not going to be mad at Asagi. I think he's just going to be like, all right, gauntlet thrown down, challenge accepted. I'm going to catch up to you now. And their whole manga flirtation is going to be this back and forth. I'm catching up to you. Well, now you're catching up to me sort of thing. It's their foreplay. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. But of course, Asagi's already thinking about playing Reen, and nobody is listening, right? I love the way that we have their beds. Asagi is like the middle ground. I can see why Baro is fine with Asagi, because if you look at Asagi's bed in this scene, you can see that Asagi has everything tucked away. His bed's not as neat as Baro's, but he just has everything all tidied up. Nagi is just laying down, getting the bed wet, and just some clothes there. Chigiri is a diva whose stuff is thrown everywhere. And I know people like Chigiri in hotel rooms. I know them. I had students last year on my speech team. We were at Nationals. We were only there for like 5 days, which is a decent period of time. But we were there, and the night before we were supposed to leave, we were leaving at like 6 a.m. that morning. And at like 9 o'clock at night, I was like, I'll go check on everybody, make sure we're all ready to go tomorrow morning. I walked in these two guys' room, looked around. It was like a tornado went through. I was like, guys, what is this? And they're like, oh yeah, we gotta just pick up some stuff. And I was like, we gotta leave in like 6 hours. It's like, what are you doing? But yeah, I'm just like, I know those people that once they go into like a room or a hotel room, it's just like stuff everywhere. And I'm like, we're not here that long. What if you forget something? I would definitely be more like Baro or Asagi in my room. I keep everything like in a nice little corner so that I just have to quickly pack up. I'm ready to go. I do not like settle into a hotel room or anything like that when I go. No. It is also nice that we know the break room, now they're at the 4th stage, they're in a room like Rin's team where they have a TV and they each have their own separate bed. But Baro is like the most neat. He's like, how dare you all? And of course, Chigiri is like more concerned with hair maintenance than keeping things tidy. And he's like, I've got leg care to worry about. I like that Nagi's to the point where he's been around Baro so much, he knows that Baro's going to clean for them. And he's like, could you put my towel in the washing machine? Maid Baro. I love it. And Baro's like, I hate all of you. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to go. And Asagi's like, they're so self-centered. He's like, this chaos, which is like, Asagi, you chose this chaos. You picked these people for your team. You knew this was going to happen. You knew this was going to be a thing. You should accept it. I also like the blue lock tissue box that's on Baro and Asagi's nightstand. That's hilarious. Also, the way the room is separated, Asagi and Baro are together on one side, and Nagi and Shigiri are on the other side together, and they're the ones that have kind of bonded in this episode, so that's really fun. But I love that Shigiri, like, Asagi's like, you guys want to go get some food? And Shigiri and Nagi are like, nah. And Baro's like, let's get out of here. Let's go. I'm going to get food with you right now. I love Baro and Asagi bonding, which, here's the thing. Baro's the type of person that, you know, he's the type of person that he's kind of a tsundere. You got to kind of warm up to him. But if you meet him on his level and you get respect from him, then he'll open up to you. And I feel like Rin is kind of the same way a little bit. So, like, the fact that Asagi has, like, wormed his way into Baro's heart, his green fart aura has wafted into Baro's sensory organs, and he can't get it out now. He can't, he's like, okay, fine. He's like, you beat me last game, so I want to know what your strategy is. What's your goal in playing soccer? What's the point? What's your deal? I love that. I love Baro opening up to him, right? Asagi will worm everyone into his harem, right? He wormed Shigiri into his harem back when he was, like, talking with him about his injury and everything in the first selection. He's wormed Nagi into his harem, being like, you know, both of them working together towards their common goal and kind of gelling and everything. He's now wormed Baro into the harem. Bachira was the first person in the harem. And so now, I mean, Kunigami's, like, on the outside of the harem, but he's kind of there. Reo, not in the harem at all. I think Rin, I see why a lot of people maybe want to ship Asagi and Rin, because it is that, oh, Rin has this frigid, cold heart that won't melt for anyone. And Asagi's like, what about for me? And I'm sure that Rin is going to end up, here's the thing. If Asagi faces Rin and he wants to devour Rin, which I think he does, and Rin sees that, that may be what Rin is looking for and being like, okay. I feel like Rin could respect Asagi the way that Baro respects Asagi. Baro respects Asagi because Asagi can get on his level and match him, and Baro's not used to that. And he's like, okay, fine, you can get on my level, I guess we'll talk. I feel like Rin's gonna be the same way. Rin's gonna be like, oh, nobody else can get on my level, but you can? Oh, all right. I want to know more about you. I want to do a psychological reading of you. Sure. I guess. Whatever. And, you know, I feel like that's going to be the case, right? We'll talk about the monster thing with Rin, though. That was probably the most interesting thing about that conversation. But I like that Baro is like, you know, Isagi's trying to feel him out, and he's like, is he mad at me and everything? And Baro's like, no, I want to ask, like, what's your thing? And what frustrated me about this conversation, the only thing that frustrated me, was that Asagi talked about his spatial awareness and his direct shot. I'm like, what about your adaptability? But maybe Asagi doesn't want to reveal all his hands. Maybe he doesn't consider it a weapon, just part of who he is. And Baro's like, he's like, I told you the other day. And Baro's like, oh, I wasn't listening back then because you weren't on my level yet. He's like, I may have went too far. And Baro's like, no. I like that Baro is mature enough to say, like, he's like, no, you were right. I just don't like you calling me donkey. That's like a trigger word for me, so don't do it. He's like, no. But he's like, no, everything else was pretty right. He's like, don't doubt yourself or I'm going to take the lead from you. He's like, I'm stronger now because you beat me. He's like, what kind of soccer do you want to play? And then Asagi's like, I just like who you are right now. And I'm like, oh, the shipping. I like my ship rankings right now with Asagi are, if I have to rank the Asagi ships, if we're going from dry desert oasis where there's like, if we're going from desert to like the ocean of ships, it's like Reo and Asagi, no, not at all. Bachira and Asagi are like golden sunshine. Like they're like my, not an OTP because I'm multi-shipping, but they're right up there. And then I would say right now, Baro. I would say Baro and Asagi. I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of here for it. I like it. I would say Nagi and Reo, no. And it's not just because I like shipping Nagi and Reo so much. I view Nagi as kind of like a bro friend for Asagi. I feel like Nagi and Asagi are just bros. They're just friends. There's not really any romantic chemistry there. They're just friends. It's fine. I kind of feel that way with Chigiri, too. Chigiri and Kunigami are way too much of a ship that I'm like, Chigiri and Isagi, nah, they're just bro friends. It's fine. But then there's Reen. I know I gave y'all hell last week for trying to gaslight me into liking Reen and Isagi, but thinking about it this week and the potential that it has, I do Reen's probably my third ship. I want Reen's heart to be melted, and Bachara is not melting Reen's heart. Instead, here's the thing. I was holding out because I was like, is Bachara gonna like melt Reen's heart? And he's gonna be like, no, Reen is still like, you're not worthy, peasant, bye. So that's not a thing. But then I was like, maybe Isagi can melt Reen's heart a little bit. Reen is so frigid. I want his frozen heart melted, and I feel like Isagi is the one to do it. He's crushed through. Baro was a brick wall, and Isagi, his little sprout, wormed its way through to crack the cement, to crack the mortar, and now he's here. And then Bachara, they've been like flower and bee from the beginning of time. So I'm just interested. I'm interested in this matchup, this rematch between Isagi and Reen, especially since Isagi's grown so much. And I like that Isagi's like to Baro, he's like, I'll tell you all about me, because I want to devour you again and again. And I'm like, shipping. And Baro's like, well, I'll evolve 3 times as fast and not let you do this. I'm like, what is this flirtatious banter? What is this? Yes, please. Give me all of this. I love it. He's like, I'm going to devour you too and devour everybody else. And it's like, I love it. I love their back and forth here. And then I love how Chigiri and Nagi bond. They bond so much just over little things, like Nagi showing Chigiri how little he knows about soccer. He doesn't know about all the famous players. He's just watching random clips, and Chigiri's like, you don't know who this is? That's the guy that Isagi's been about since day one. You don't even know who he is? Okay, hold on. You need to see this clip and this clip. Like their friendship between Nagi and Chigiri is so organic, and I love how natural it is. And their personalities, because Chigiri's such a diva. Chigiri needs somebody like Kunigami, who, one, has been raised around sisters, so probably knows the divaness, but also is like this grounded, very like kind of blunt person to handle Chigiri. That's what Kunigami does. And Nagi is kind of similar to that, where Nagi's just kind of blunt. And he's like, I don't know what is this? And Chigiri's like, oh, let me show you. So it makes sense why they get along so easily, right? Chigiri and Baro are like polar opposites. They are like never going to be shipped together, because Baro and Chigiri, no. They're like oil and water, right? Or they're just oil and oil, and it just doesn't work. But I like the idea of Chigiri, like, not only showing him the clips, but working with him. And I like that Chigiri opens up to Nagi, because Nagi's the type of person, Nagi's blunt, but he's also considerate. So Nagi being like, what about your injury? Can you tell me about that? And Chigiri's like, sure. And because Nagi is so genuine and open, that Chigiri feels like he can share stuff with him. And I really love it. I love their bonding. It's so cute. And I love, Nagi being like, wow, does it hurt? Like, what is this like? And he's like, oh, not anymore. Like, I love just like the facial expressions Nagi has when Chigiri opens up to him are so cute and precious. I'm like, oh, no, Nagi, adorable. So cute. I love it. It's beautiful. But yeah, I love the idea that these 4 want to be the best players in the world, and they're all these big personalities, but they're all getting along in their own way. Of course. And then when Isagi's like, I can't wait to play against Reen and the others, right? So the question's gonna be, let's be real. We now have these 2 teams against one another, presumably next episode. I think that Chigiri and Aryu are going to be facing one another. The hair versus the hair. Who's got the most glam hair? It's going to be a hair glam off between Aryu and Chigiri. Who's going to have the best? Chigiri's going to be like, well, I have a braid. And Aryu's going to be like, I need to braid my hair right now. Maybe. And then we have Toki. Toki, I think, is going to be against Baro, because Toki and Baro are, like powerhouses. Toki is a powerhouse. I think that Baro is too. So it's going to be a matchup between them. Then I think it's going to be Nagi and Bachara against one another, because why wouldn't we, right? The 2 that are the ball handlers. Nagi's the ball handler. Bachara's the ball handler. That would make sense. And then it's Isagi and Reen, because of course it is. Because of course it is, because Reen needs to learn his lesson. Reen needs to get his heart demelted, defrosted on high, and Isagi's gonna have to be the one to do it. So, main character versus main villain sort of thing, like you do. I just love that not only is, the good thing is that Reen, well, the good thing is that Baro walks in and Chigiri and Nagi are not on his bed. I think that would have been the straw that broke the camel's back. But it's just they've been kicking everything around, and Baro's like, how did it get messier than before? How? Baro would be the team room mom. Every room needs like someone to like head up organization. That would be Baro. Baro's team mom, where he's just like, no, let's get this organized. What are we doing? What's happening with your life? I just love it. I love how everything's around. They're like, look, we're kicking stuff around, and Nagi's practicing. And Baro's like, I hate you so much. All of you. That's my shoe. And he's like, just wait, Reen and Bachara. I like that Sagi does not mess with Toki or Aryu. Forget them. But he's like, Reen and Bachara, just wait. I'll give in to this surge of excitement and face whoever stands in our way. Yes! So then Bachara is trying to get along with Reen. And Reen makes it so hard to try to like him, because it's like he does not take the compliment, does not show any emotion or happiness or remote being pleased. He's just like, shut up, you're still half-baked, bob cut. He's not like Baro in that respect, where he's like, just being mean. And Bachara's like, well, isn't it fun to play with me? And he's like, well, you'll never beat me with dribbles that rely on feel. So Reen in his own way is trying to give Bachara some pointers. He's like, you're just dribbling based on your feeling and your instinct, but there has to be technique behind it. Here's the thing with Reen. I'll put Reen up here. Reen talking about technique and finesse. That is like the mastering the basics. Instincts are not enough alone for Reen. He's like, you have to be able to master the basics. My theory about Reen stands that I don't think Reen is a prodigy. No, I don't think Reen is a prodigy. I don't think Reen has the monster inside of him. I think Reen is just like, everything I do is soccer, and I'm going to keep practicing and dedicating my soul to it until I can beat my brother, who is the prodigy. Again, it's the Oikawa mentality. It's like literally the one thing that's made me like Reen more, being like, oh, you're kind of like Oikawa, except you're not a diva. You're just kind of a prick. Also, Baro calling Chigiri prickcess is high amazing. Love it. He's like, you can't beat me with just emotions and feeling. And Bachara's like, well, we don't know until we try. And he's like, but I do know. You look like you're having fun when you're dribbling, but you're just afraid to fight alone. You want looking for someone with soccer. He's like, you don't want to fight alone. And Bachara's like, what was this read? What was this read? What was this soul crushing, getting psychological? Are we on a couch? Am I in a therapy session? What is this? But yeah, Reen's not wrong. Bachara wants to be strong to match someone, to play with them. But Bachara is not necessarily playing soccer to be the best for himself. And I think Reen's like, that's why you're not going to beat me, because you're not doing this for yourself. You're doing this because you want someone else and you're lonely, and that's not going to make you the best striker. Which is not wrong, right? I mean, I don't think Bachara should get dogged for believing that way, but in Blue Lock, that's not enough, is what Reen is saying, right? And Isagi, I think that's why Isagi is going to get to Reen being like, oh, I just want to eat you. I don't want to play with you. I want to eat you. And Reen's going to be like, I'm into that kinky shit. Okay. I think that's what's going to happen, right? So I'm like, there's potential. All right. If Bachara is honey, then, what is Reen? Reen is like a salt block. Baby Bachara, though, with his little, Ikazaki little dolphin thing. I'm like, are they near Iwatobi Swim Club? Is this near that? But I just love Bachara. Like, baby Bachara with the soccer ball is so cute. And that he's just obsessed with it. And he's been that way with the monster from the beginning, right? I feel like it's like the mom who is obsessed with painting. Her artwork is like, there's a monster inside of her that leads her on with her artwork. just like Batra is led on with his soccer, right? The only thing is, she doesn't seem to be painting for anyone specifically. She's painting for herself. So maybe she's not dream doping. I don't know. I was curious about that the entire episode. Like I said earlier, I didn't know if maybe she was dream doping and maybe her advice wasn't doing what Ego would want Batra to think, but I don't know. It would be funny if Reen was just like a sleeper agent this whole time. If Reen was just like a sleeper agent this whole time for Ego, trying to find the one person that Ego's looking for, that'd be kind of funny, but I don't think that's the case at all. I do like how Batra is kind of this mix. I wanted to say it in the reaction, but I didn't get time. Batra is kind of a mix of Bokudo and Tendo from Haikyuu, because he has this like, there's a lot of moments in Haikyuu with Bokudo where he's kind of the weirdo. He's the odd guy out. Nobody understands why he's so obsessed with volleyball. But Bokudo's like, that's just how I am. And he just moves on with it, right? He doesn't let that deter him. And Batra's kind of like that. But then there's also a part of Batra that's like Tendo from Haikyuu, where Tendo was kind of viewed as a weirdo because of how good he was at volleyball and how he wanted to play. And he wanted to always play with somebody and nobody would play back. So when he went to Shiratorizawa, the coach was like, I don't care who you play with or what you do as long as you're good. And Tendo's like, okay. And he was accepted and found this like camaraderie with his team that accepted him, even though he was different. And I feel like Batra is kind of a mix of that. He's very accepting of his weirdness. He doesn't even view it as a weirdness. He's just like, that's just how I am. But he also is like a star that he just shines. But he wants to shine alongside someone. And that's the problem. He hasn't found that person yet, right? He hasn't found that person to shine with. And that kind of makes him a little bit like Almine from Kuroko's Basketball, just a little bit. And the mom is like, just live your life believing in soccer. And she's like, when you become an adult, you pretend you can't hear the voice anymore. And then you just kind of settle. And eventually you can't hear what it's saying. You aren't inspired anymore. And she's like, that voice inside your head. And her painting kind of even looks like a monster, which is interesting. But it's also kind of blurred. So there's not really a definition of it anymore. So maybe she is chasing after that monster's voice in the end. And she can't see or hear it anymore like she used to. And she doesn't want Batra to end up that way. And so he has the dream where he's playing with the monster, but he keeps wanting to play with the people who have monsters as well. I also love his bedroom. His bedroom with like all the colors, the posters everywhere, all the figurines, the colors and everything like that all. He also has a little plant with a sprout on it, kind of like Asagi on his desk. He has like little green tentacles coming out everywhere, just saying. The lava lamp is green, just saying. But the point is he wants to play others who have the monster inside of them as well. He wants to meet a real version of that monster. And in the end, they lose that prelim final of the championship because his teammates couldn't live up to that standard. They just said he was ball hogging. I like that even though their team loses, what I like is we go back, this part of the episode, when we go back to the beginning and see everything from Batra's point of view, I loved that. Because I love seeing when Batra looks up at the monster and he's like, I'm not going to ignore it. He's like, I continue to believe in the fun of soccer, which can be so easily forgotten. What I love about that moment is that Batra, he doesn't react to the loss the way that Asagi reacts. Asagi is kind of like, apathetic and downtrodden and sad about it. And Batra is just like, I'll just keep moving forward no matter what anybody says. And have fun with soccer no matter what happens. And that's kind of, it can be a weapon against you if you're just looking at the fun of soccer. Like, Reen's kind of saying, yeah, you think soccer's fun, that's great, but then what? Then what do you do with it? Is it supposed to just be all fun and games? I could see why Reen would not like Batra's perspective, because Batra just is such a free spirit and he views soccer in such a way. And for Reen, it's a battlefield. It's not supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be life or death all the time. It's like, you need some therapy, sir. But Batra, he keeps on, believing in his way of soccer and why he wants to play. And he has like the bumblebee pattern of black and yellow on him, but he's afraid that he's going to remain alone playing like that. And that's when he gets the letter about Blue Lock. God, seeing now, again, before we get to him seeing it from his perspective, episode 1, him like looking at all the amazing players and asking them to pass, and Zico looks back at him, smiles, and then turns away and runs away from him. I think that's going to be what Bachara is. That's going to be Bachara's struggle moving forward, and what he's going to have to work on. Because I think that deep down in his core, he's playing soccer for fun. He wants to be around strong people. He's not afraid of strong people. And he has all these positives about his character. But the one thing holding him back from being the best he can be is that in the end, in his heart of hearts, he wants to play with someone, not play against them. He doesn't want to be lonely. And the strikers, strikers that are the best in the game, they are kind of alone. But the loneliness is different, right? Because they're strikers and they're on the mountains alone by themselves, but they're not lonely. That's going to be the thing. Is Bachar going to be able to grow to where he understands the difference between loneliness and being on top? And on top alone versus being lonely are two different emotions. And I think Bachar needs to figure out what he's going to do with that. And Reen kind of says, you haven't figured that out yet, so it's not going to work between you and I. It's like, okay. But then seeing the first episode from his perspective, that was amazing. I loved that. I loved how we saw it from his perspective. Everything about it. It was so fascinating seeing it all from his perspective and what he was thinking in his head when he woke up, and then him seeing Kunigami, and then him seeing how everyone looked at him, and then him finding Isagi and believing that Isagi was the monster he's been looking for. Man, he's like, if that happened, he'd go back to those days where he felt he might die of loneliness. But the strongest one here, even though I'm scared, there he is. The true monster I've been waiting for, longing for, searching for so long. If this friend exists, he'll be right there. And it's Isagi. That is some soulmate shit right there. I'm not gonna lie. The monster's like, that's him. And he's like, pass it to him. That's why Meguru believes in Isagi Yoichi. And that hasn't changed. Ever since then, I believed Isagi Yoichi was the one who could understand my soccer the best and share the joy of it with me. And that hasn't changed. I like that hasn't changed. He's like, I still think that Isagi is going to share the joy of it with me, right? The question is Isagi going to be like, hey, Bachara, we're going to share this soccer together, but for us to do that, we need to keep chasing each other, right? And it's going to be like, we'll see. We'll see. But Asagi's not there yet, so he's like, and then he goes back to what Reen told him, and he's like, you're looking for someone with your soccer. And he's like, Reen, how did you know I was looking for someone? And Reen's like, what? He's like, no one's ever said that to me before. And then he's like, the guy who noticed the monster inside of me. And he's like, I have a monster inside of me. And Reen's like, what does that mean? So Reen does not have a monster inside of him because he doesn't know what that means. He's like, it's like a vision of the soccer that I want to play. I came to Blue Lock to find that monster in real life. Yes, there we go. And then Reen says, who cares? He's like, because you're so obsessed with something that childish, your play is wimpy and half-baked. It's interesting. I think that that's another sign that Reen is not a prodigy. I think the prodigies all have a monster inside of them that is, that is moving them forward, that they can see that no one else can see. And Reen doesn't have that monster. He doesn't have that voice in his head. So I think that makes Reen a little bit different than all of them in that regard. If Reen was the only one that made it, the only average Joe that made it to the end and he's the best, that would kind of be amazing. But I'm so curious. I want more about Reen, but I know that they're giving us crumbs with Reen because they know that it has to lead up to him facing Sai again. They know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. He's like, go play soccer with your monster for the rest of your life. In the meantime, I'm going to become the best in the world. And Batra doesn't let it get him down. He doesn't let it deter him. He's just kind of like, oh, he's like, maybe there's another monster I don't fully understand yet. And I feel like Batra wants to get to know Reen more because he's like, maybe Reen is a monster. He just doesn't realize it. And he's like, or maybe he doesn't care. He's like, I want to know what kind of monster he is, and maybe that will help me become a better version of myself. We'll see. And so he's like, he's different from Asagi. Yeah, no, Reen is very different from Asagi. There is no question at all that Reen is a different type of monster than Asagi. I feel like Reen is not one of adaptability. Reen is just foundation. Just, I am a brick fortress. I'm going to bulldoze you over, and that's it. He's not really, I don't know if Reen is very adaptable. I don't think that's the case at all, which I think is why he's a different monster than Asagi. And speaking of which, then Asagi shows up, and he's just there, and he's like, hey, I like Asagi's just up against the wall, like, hey guys, hands in his pockets, like, sup guys, just trying to look cool. How long did Asagi take to figure out what pose he was going to be in? He's like, I'm just going to sit here and just, be up against this wall, being cool as a cucumber. How long was he there? He's like, yo, Batra, I've been looking for you. Doesn't even mention Reen. What a cad. What a chad. And Batra's like, Asagi. And Reen's just like, hey. And he's like, as promised, I've come to get you back. And he's like, and Meguru fights to find out. And then he says, let's do this, Reen. I don't know. Which of the two monsters, Asagi Yoichi and Atoshi Reen, can delight his heart more? And we see Batra's, his aura is blue, which is, his aura is blue, which is blue lock, right? Mm-hmm. I love it. It's like the bright baby blue, like the sky. Mm-hmm. Like all these possibilities. I feel like Batra is the type, he's polar opposite of Reo. He's not clingy. Instead, he's just like, sky's the limit. I could be with anybody as long as they can match me, and as long as they make me better, I can do anything. So I feel like he wants Asagi to delight his heart more, but if Reen does it, then he'll just, be like, well, I guess I'll be curious to see what Reen has to offer if that's the case. Right? They're kind of like in an open relationship. Now, the way that Asagi phrases it, where he says, I've come to get you back, it does make you think that he's going to choose Batra of them. But, so I don't know. I think it could be good either way. I think if he picks Batra, cool, that'll be nice. But I think he could also very well choose Reen. If he doesn't choose Reen and he's like, Reen, come and get me, is Reen going to be spurred by such things, spurned on by such moves? I don't know. What I do know is that I've talked for almost an hour and 15 minutes about this episode. And then we have the additional time where Kon and Imamura and them show up. And then, of course, nobody wanted to be on Kon's team because he was a traitor. That all makes sense. And Lemon and Imamura are like, yeah, it just took us longer to get here. And Kon says, you could choose somebody else. And Imamura's like, no, we're just late starters. We were slow to clear the last stage. So I'd rather team up with someone I know and move forward than to get disqualified just because we're picky. Mm-hmm. But if you betray us again, you're sentenced to death. I like we actually get some character development with Imamura, right? Nice. So yeah, and then Lemon, of course. Lemon's like, oh God, I don't have to be a goalie again. Thank God. And then they're like, oh, you're going to be our goal guy. And he's like, no. I like it. Also, why does Imamura's number say 888? Why is he literally last? What is happening? Is that a continuity error? What number was Kon? Did it say what number Kon and Lemon were? I don't think it does it? I want to look back up here. No, we don't get Kon or Lemon's numbers. We just get, it says 898 on Imamura. I feel like that's such a trick. What? Anyway, I'm glad that Lemon does not have to be the goalie. Oh, Lemon says 888 too, so maybe they're not telling us their numbers. Boo. Numbers don't matter at this point. And then Lemon passes out, and so their start was delayed even more. Poor guys. Oh no. So the sad thing is, I want Lemon and all of them to move forward and get more people on the team because I don't want any of them to go home. So we'll just have to wait and see. But God, this episode was so good. I love this episode so much. There's so much to talk about. And I can't wait to hear y'all's comments down below. I can't believe we're getting into the final, what I think is the final main match of the season, is the rematch. We're getting to that next. And some team is going to make it past the second selection by the end of this season. Some team is going to do it. Whose team is it going to be? I don't know. That's the question. I mean, I keep making it sound like Asagi and all them are going to win against them. But if they end up winning, are they going to pick Asagi or not? You know, we have to think of that too. So I don't know, but we'll just have to see. So I hope y'all enjoyed this episode and discussion. I can't wait to hear your comments down below, but I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Blue Lock. Bye.